Is that all? Is that all you got? I mean, wow. Okay, that's very good. Sounds
I
like
had 2 cassette tapes. It was full after that.
very, very impressive. Jackie Brambles tonight from 7 o'clock. However, first of all, let's see how we perform here in the confession, which comes from Ollie. Thank you, Ollie, for today's tale. Simon and the team, after much deliberation and a number of guilt trips throughout the years, I feel it's time I sought forgiveness for an episode that I was involved in many years ago, going way back to around 1987, when I was but a lad of around 19. One Saturday afternoon on a sunny summer's day, I ventured with my mate, Matt, for a beer or two and to have a catch-up on the week just gone. In one of the local drinking establishments, we were happily enjoying our tipple and catch-up when the doors opened and in stepped the local rugby team. Boisterous and somewhat merry, the lads from the rugby team were having a good attempt at ridding the bar of the reasonably priced beverages. It wasn't long before one of the furrowed-browed purveyors of the oval balls spotted me and my mate in the corner, clutching our glasses like they were some kind of treasure. So over he came and approached us, grunting, "Here, lads, do you want a beer?" I happen to know that's not the correct accent.
No, I mean,
but it's all I've got.
Ray Winston again, right?
I suppose it could have been worse. We both declined the very kind invitation, as we didn't particularly wanted to get to a drinking game with a rugby team, and certainly didn't want to end up by pouring beers over our heads, because that's where it always ended. One of the fellow rugby players yelled, "Oi, Tez, leave them alone. They're just trying to have beer on their own." And it rhymed, and it was lovely, much to rapturous laughter from the rest of the Oval Ball Brigade. Anyway, so one of them was called Tez. During the next 30 minutes, I probably heard all their names, but there's a reason why Tez sticks in the mind. The scrum squad left the pub around 2 or 3 minutes before we moved on, desperately hoping to avoid them in the next drinking establishment, of which there were many to choose from. Now, directly outside the pub, we were greeted with a sight that can best be described as one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. The rugby lads had decided to bet Tez a beer that he couldn't fit into the Postman Pat child's ride that was located outside a shop just opposite the pub. Well, rugby lads being what they are, Tez took on the challenge. So there he was, all 6'4" of him, squeezing his way inch by inch into the bright red child's ride. Could he do it? Would he manage to squeeze his 19 stone and then some frame into this poor creaking machine? After much struggling, cursing and a whole lot of laughing from the rest of the rugby team, he'd mastered it, and Tez was on the ride. With his head hanging out the front window of the ride, each arm out of both doors, his knees jammed against a minute steering wheel, and his back end rammed into the rear section of Postman Pat's van, there he was, he'd mastered the quest. It was then that a panicked look came over the face of Tez. He was quickly going a bright shade of red and parts of his bulky anatomy purple. He was asking for help from his mates to get him out, pleading with them and asking them to help free him from the machine. In true rugby day-out fashion, the rest of the team did exactly what I thought they'd do. They walked off and headed to the next pub, leaving poor old Tez in the middle of the precinct, stuck into the Postman Pat ride, surrounded by bewildered children and annoyed parents. Tez caught my eye and said, "Here, mate, I offered to buy you a beer. Can you help me?" Well, how could I refuse? I told him to wait there and I'd be back in a moment. True to my word, I was back within a minute, and in my hand, the answer to many prayers. Not a hacksaw, not bolt cutters. No, in my hand was a pound's worth of 20p pieces. And you could put as many 20p pieces in the ride as you liked and just leave it running. I placed the 20p pieces into the slot and pressed start. And off the machine went, rocking, or more like creaking back and forth, the delightful music playing Postman Pat and his black and white cat over and over again. The bewilderment in the children's faces had turned to delighting, giggling laughter. The parents were even more annoyed as the expletives emitting from Tez's mouth should never be heard anywhere near a child's ride ever. After 3 repetitions in the machine, I thought it was probably best to make my escape, and sharpish, before Tez got loose and forced me into a similar fate to himself. As I turned to make good my plan, it was then I heard them. I was filled with the dread as I heard the dulcet tone of the fire brigade arriving. The sirens got louder and louder until eventually they pulled up outside the shop. 4 firefighters got out and assessed the situation. They tried and tried. They had bolt cutters, they had a saw, they had stretcher jaws, they had the usual fireman equipment. However, the firemen could not help. This is because each one of them, to a man, was in hysterics and could do nothing for laughing. They were professional enough to apologise to Tez, but still could not hold back huge gales of laughter. Of course, this set the rest of the crowd off as Tez went through the final cycle of Pat and his cat song, The Fire Brigade Looking On. 30 to 40 people around this spectacle of unexpected entertainment. The ride came to a halt. It was time for me to leave, so I never saw how the fireman actually got Tez out of the machine or if he was okay. I'm just glad he didn't see me in any of the pubs that night. I couldn't tell if he found it funny or not. Probably not. So I'd like to be forgiven and be able to sleep again at night, please, thanks to the blessings of your flock. Not for Tez being stuck in the machine, as that was hilarious and partly his fault. But I'd like forgiveness from the fire brigade being called out on a Saturday afternoon and spoiling their shift. And finally, forgiveness for interrupting a good 20 minutes drinking time for the rugby team. Although they had a good laugh watching Tez change colour. Please grant me your divine forgiveness for my childish, vengeful prank, because that, of course, is what it was. A childish, vengeful stunt. But maybe it went well, and maybe people are feeling forgiving. Almost certainly not, Sister Jackie.
Whilst I do applaud the despicable nature of the prank, I think traumatising young children for life, where never again could they look at a postman without quivering and remembering that rage against that particular machine. So I'm afraid not forgiven, no.
I suspected that rage against the machine is very, very good.
Very good, I think so.
Brother from another gutter.
The rugby boys all got their comeuppance, and I think we were very much hoping they would be. And 20p well spent. In fact, several 20p's well spent. I'm definitely going to be forgiving, and I think all right-minded people will do as well.
Well, we'll find out, shall we? So it's kind of split here. People's verdict, what do you say? 61054. Start your message with Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from Ollie, who, when faced with a 6'4" 19-stone rugby player squeezed into a Postman Pat children's ride, decided the best thing to do, and he was asked for help. He went and got 5 lots of 20p's and just pumped it in, and even the fire brigade couldn't rescue him because they were laughing way too much. The people's verdict goes like this.
So Jess in Norwich says, not forgiven. Will no one think of the poor children who wanted to go on the Postman Pat ride?
Think of the children.
Think of the children. Sophie in Weymouth, though, says, totally forgiven. I played rugby for many years. This is hilarious. Also, I bet it was the highlight of the firefighters' month. And Malcolm in Leominster says, forgiven. Sounds like it gave the firefighters a good laugh. My wife did the same thing all of her own accord when on holiday. I put 20p in, and then after her shouting at me, I had to help her out.
Okay, well, maybe it's a very common thing that we've experienced here, but thank you very much indeed for taking part. And if you have a confession, you can send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. This is 5:47. A number of people calling in to say they're wondering if Jackie Brambles is going to be on the show, and if so, what superstars is she going to have on the show today? Fortunately, she is. I think I can hear her laughing there.
I did.
Meantime, Tuesday's confession comes from Big Al. Hey, Big Al. Dear Simon, this saga goes back a few years whilst on holiday in Ibiza. There's a little bit of Spanish in here.
Oh, very nice.
I mean, not much, really, to be
Ooh
honest.
la la. Oh, no, wrong one.
Zootalo. There was a group of us, partners and friends, and although it was Ibiza, we were all of a certain age, Father Sam. Put it this way, we would not have qualified for the 1830 set. Mm-hmm. On arrival at our hotel, we were allocated rooms on the second floor. And it was decided the ladies would have one of the family rooms and us 4 men would have the other. Each room had a balcony, though the view was not brilliant. In fact, it looked over a small car-lined street with a laundrette opposite. But it was just a base, which is what you always say when your hotel is rubbish. It's just a base.
Yes,
we're going to be out.
Yeah.
We'll barely be there.
Yes. The story centres around a good friend who, for the sake of this story, we're going to call Clive. Clive had never been abroad before and had packed rather hurriedly, bringing with him a rather limited supply of underwear. We had been there for 5 days and Clive had already taken to washing his pants out and drying them out on the balcony.
Nice.
It's classy.
Yeah.
This late afternoon, we were enjoying a beer on the balcony and Clive had nipped inside to get more beer. While he was gone, I noticed a Spanish lady, a señorita, entering one of the parked cars in the street below. So I grabbed a pair of his pants, a pair I knew he'd become particularly attached to, and to this day I don't know what possessed me, but I dropped them onto the roof of the car. They landed perfectly, Father Simon, forming a flat Y shape, and a combination of the hot roof and the damp pants stuck like glue. Gunmetal grey pants on a yellow Mazda.
Lovely.
A sight to behold. Clive returned at that moment, beer in hand, and looked over, wondering what we were laughing at. He noticed. "My pants!" he exclaimed, and dashed back out of the room and out the door, heading for the stairs. We leant over in excited anticipation for his entrance into the street below. What a scene this is going to be. This he did just as the car was driving away. Bearing in mind, Clive was clad only in shorts and flip-flops, with a few days of Spanish sun on him was a lovely shade of scarlet. What a sight it was. The poor Spanish lady spotted this reddish, rotund man with arms whirling around, shouting, "Stoppo! Stoppo!" I mean, what is stop in Spanish?
Alto. That's what you say to stop someone.
Right, so
Alto.
Stoppo is just that ludicrous nonsense.
Ludicrous, obviously,
Okay.
yeah.
Stoppo, he's shouting in her rear-view mirror, and the car accelerated away, with Clive in hot pursuit, finally disappearing around a corner at the bottom of the road. He pursued her, we understand, through the streets, continuing to shout, "Stoppo, Stoppo," nearly catching her at one junction, but just as he reached for his pants, which were tantalizingly still stuck on the roof, she drove away. She was doing it on purpose. If you have favourite pants, Father Simon, you don't give them up easily. We were in fits when a cry went up, "He's coming back!" And sure enough, there he was, stomping up the street, face as red as the Iberian sun, minus the pants and, bizarrely, one flip-flop.
Oh.
He has always assumed the wind had blown his pants off. Not a line I've ever said before, by the way.
No.
He became the butt of many a joke that holiday and for many years to come. So, Clive, which is what we're calling him, it wasn't the wind, it was me, your good friend. Do seek forgiveness from him, but more so from the Spanish señorita, who he had pursued through the streets of Escanar. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Escanar
Yeah.
in Ibiza.
Yeah.
On her arrival at home, having to explain why she had a pair of grey Y-fronts, grey English Y-fronts, adhered to the roof of her car. Whether English Y-fronts are any different to any other Y-fronts or not, I'm not at all sure. But anyway, many thanks, says Big Al. Do I get any forgiveness for my pants story? Started with very stern and always unforgiving, Sister Jackie Brambles.
Well, on the one hand, you're not forgiven because you should have just chucked all his pants off, because that would have been far funnier than just the one favourite pair of pants. But also, on a much more serious note, you have traumatised the young Spanish lady who thinks that all English tourists run about looking like lobsters chasing her down the street yelling "Stoppo."
Yes.
So, no, not forgiven.
Also, he must have gone away with like 2 pairs of pants.
Yes.
Don't you think?
That's not very good at
Crazy.
all. I mean, it is quite clearly all Clive's fault, this, really. Number one, as you say, doesn't take enough pants with him. Number two, he's wearing grey pants. Don't wear grey pants. That's not a good look at all.
Well, they
and
might
certainly don't dry them drying smalls on the balcony. That's a bad move as well.
My guess is they were white originally.
Oh, the even better thought. Wow. Also, Spain sells pants. Buy yourself some more pants when you're in Ibiza,
Do they?
Clive.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Go in for your calzoncillos in a Spanish supermarket. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Say that again.
Calzoncillos.
That's that what you asked?
Spanish pants.
Okay, I'd like Spanish pants, please.
Spanish
And
pants.
make them snappy, my good man. Okay, is the people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Big Al, yes or no? On the text, please, 61054. First word is Simon. Or you can email simon@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Before the news, we had a confession from Big Al, and the story about how Clive chased a Spanish woman in her car because his pants were on her roof, but she drove off. Anyway, the verdict is in.
So Tracy in Bath says, forgiven. If the description of Clive's dirty old grey knickknacks is accurate, it sounds like they should have been taken away a long time ago. Josh in Walton on the Hill, I agree with Matt. This really was Clive's fault. His Spanish stoppo, along with his lack of packing skills, mean that really he deserved it. And Jin from Tipton says, I forgive, as I also didn't take enough pants with me a few years ago to sunny Benidorm and ended up wearing swimming shorts instead with netting. And all I can say is, I'll never make that mistake again. You can never have enough pants.
Very good, thank you. And as you say, they sell pants
do.
in Spain and in fact
Confirmed.
in most countries.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've got a confession, send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Welcoming you to our confessional booth. Brother Matthew is already in position, of course, because he has to be.
Because I'm here.
Because you're here. And Sister Jackie Brambles joins us from Brambles HQ. What's on the show tonight?
We have Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt, a.k.a. the Rock-on-Tours. We've got them by to name drop about their podcast. Looking
They have
forward
got
to
a
that.
very good podcast. All right, okay, that's coming up tonight with Jackie Brambles at 7 o'clock. First of all, we have this confession, which comes from Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you for this. Father Simon, my story begins during the long, hot summer of 1976. I was 11, and my annoying little brother, let's call him Stuart, was 9. Like any older brother with an annoying younger brother, he insisted on following me and my friends around like a lost puppy, much to the amusement of my friends who used to rib me about it at every possible opportunity. Something had to be done about Stuart. That summer, I'd become firm friends with someone from my school called David. David's family were quite well off and had just purchased a brand new top-of-the-range caravan, which took pride of place in their driveway. David's father, a rather scary, imperious police officer, would spend hours polishing his new acquisition whilst boring us at every opportunity about how hard he's had to work and how much he'd had to save to get such an impressive state-of-the-art example of modern family holidaying luxury. One particular afternoon, I, with my ever-present annoying little brother in tow, turned up at David's house on our chopper bikes. I just pause at this point to say they both had chopper bikes. I always wanted a chopper bike, and I never
amazing,
had one.
isn't it?
So both of them,
What's
they're
going
doing
on
fine. Now, for those that have never had the joy of riding one, says Jonathan, I thought choppers were inherently unstable, actually, due to their rather small front wheel and silly easy rider style handlebars, which made steering in a straight line, shall we say, challenging to say the least.
Very true.
I really wanted one, though. I never got one.
Okay.
David's father had always made it very clear in his rather stern policeman tone that under no circumstances should we attempt to ride our bikes on the drive, but to dismount on the pavement and leave our bikes well away from his new pride and joy. Well, maybe it was the heat of the long, hot summer getting to me, or possibly just the thought of doing something I'd been told I wasn't allowed to do. I shall never know. But not only was I going to ride my bike on David's drive, but I was going to steer my wobbly steed down the narrow gap between the shiny new caravan and next door's hedge. You can perhaps sense where this is going.
Yeah.
I set off at pace up the drive, utilising all three of the chopper's gears so as to gather up as much speed as possible. By the time I reached the shiny caravan, I was going at a fair lick, I can tell you. What followed was one of those slow-motion moments captured in my mind forever as I lost control of my wayward mount and my brake lever made contact with the side of the caravan. When I say make contact, I mean it left a 6-inch long, very deep and very wide gouge, which even the hardiest of panel beaters would have taken one look at, and with a sharp intake of breath, declared it a completely lost cause. I was going to be in deep trouble. I looked around in panic. Had anyone seen my transgression? It would seem not. Luckily, my brother and my friend David had already disappeared inside to play with his extensive train set. Not that I was jealous of his Flying Scotsman and first edition Mallard locomotive, which would later mysteriously catch fire. But that's another confession. I had to act quickly. David's father was, after all, a highly skilled police officer with his detective law enforcement training. It wouldn't take him long to work out what had happened. I hatched a cunning plan. I grabbed my bike and bent the brake lever down far enough that it didn't line up with the huge indent now adorning the expensive caravan. And then it struck me. Not only could I absolve myself from blame, but I could lay the guilt very squarely at my annoying little brother's feet, or more precisely, at the angle of his brake lever. Without a further thought, I bent his brake lever to the exact height of the massive gaping fissure and left his bike next to the caravan whilst moving my bike back to the pavement. Soon enough, David's father returned from work and his keen eye spotted the rather large, less than attractive addition to his beloved caravan. We were all summoned outside by David's father. To say that he was enraged was frankly a gross understatement. I heard words uttered that day that no 11-year-old or anyone else, for that matter, should ever hear. After his comprehensive detective work of matching up brake levers to the enormous chasm in the side of his pristine caravan, David's father declared that the only possible culprit was, shock horror, my little brother Stuart. As you can imagine, we were all gobsmacked. How could this have happened? Still, he was only 9, and sometimes 9-year-olds do silly things, I said to David's father, feeling so slightly guilty. Fake gasps from me did little to improve the situation. as my confused little brother was led away sobbing by David's father to confront our parents, while I and David retired to the safety of his bedroom to play with his trains. The sight of my little brother being led away by a policeman in uniform to fess up to his parents for a crime he didn't commit isn't one I'm proud of, I have to admit. On the plus side, he never wanted to play with me or my friends ever again. Excuse me. I'd like to beg forgiveness, not for what I did to my brother, who frankly is as annoying today as he was back then, nor for the accidental damage to the caravan, because to be honest, I hate caravans. I do feel mildly sorry for David's father, but that's only because he was stupid enough to be conned by an 11-year-old. I do, however, seek forgiveness from the panel beater, who no doubt had to spend many hours of sweat and tears removing the humongous cavity from the caravan, knowing full well that however good the repair, it wasn't going to be good enough for David's father. Thank you, Father Simon, and the hopefully compassionate collective for listening, and I wait with some trepidation as judgment is bestowed upon me by you and hopefully your sympathetic listeners. Well, as ever, this is going to depend where you are in the pecking order of the family. If you're the younger or the youngest, I think it'll be a no. Anyway, let's check in with very responsible Sister Jackie Brambles.
Well, I am Spartacus. I, too, was an annoying 9-year-old sibling in the summer of 1976. So no, sir, you are not forgiven.
Purely based on...
Good, I like it. That's
on
good.
Family situation.
Quite right.
Brother from another gutter.
I'm going to forgive because I was the elder sibling, and my policy on younger siblings and their annoyingness is pretty clear. Also, I'm going to forgive because it took us a nice little trip down memory lane to the 70s with your choppers
Which
and
I
your
never had.
three
I
gears.
never had a chopper.
Absolutely, and your flying Scotsman.
It's all whip
and
round for Simon now.
Yes,
I feel he's
it
never
is.
going to get over it.
Quite right. Definitely forgiven.
People's verdict, please. Do you forgive Jonathan, yes or no, on the text 61054? First word is Simon. It epitomised joy, fun and a sense of freedom, which I didn't have.
Yours for a grand. Wow.
Today's story involved Jonathan, who gouged a massive fissure in his friend's dad's caravan with his chopper bike. But he fixed the evidence, so his brother copped it, because the dad was a copper. People's verdict, here it comes.
Mick in Leeds says forgiven. Ultimately, Stuart's experience was character building. I'm sure this made him the man he is today. Laura in Faygate says totally forgiven. I had an annoying younger sister. So much so that when I left school, I was given an award for having the most annoying younger sister. And Sarah says forgiven. You didn't have a chopper? Pah! I didn't even have matey bubble bath. Your man is forgiven because anyone who polishes his caravan deserves everything he gets.
Oh, I see. Right, so... It's the fact that he polished the caravan that was the problem.
Correct.
You didn't think... If only...
No.
You should have thought of that.
I should have thought of that.
All right. What was Matey Bubble Bath?
Matey Bubble Bath, the one with the man. Looks like a sailor. Matey Bubble Bath.
Who has bubble bath when they're a kid? No one has bubble bath.
Yes, we all did.
You had Matey Bubble Bath.
And a chopper.
I didn't have
For
either.
less than a grand.
Used to dream of having a rubber motorbike. Anyway, your tale, please. Your confession. We'd like to swap it for a smart speaker. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Brother Matthew is in the house.
Yes.
And Sister Jackie, hard-rocking Sister Jackie, unforgiving Sister Jackie Brambles joins us as well. Yeah? Okay, right. Today's confession comes from Cassian. Father Simon... yes, Cassian. Matt.
Cassian.
Father Simon, Sister Susie, Brother Matt, or whoever it is.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
This was an incident that occurred in the early 1980s, which is a dark secret that keeps haunting me from time to time regarding a decision or indecision I was responsible for, which could have had tragic consequences. I was promoted to be the boss of an engineering company. This operation was a division of a very successful large group with a reputation for prudent financial management. My excitement at this promotion was soon quelled by the dire cash situation caused partially by the recession and partly by the reluctance of other companies in the group to pay us for goods that we'd supplied to them. As the year went on, the situation gradually deteriorated. The pile of angry letters from suppliers got higher, soon to be joined by another pile of letters threatening court action, and later to be joined by another pile saying the bailiff would be coming. As we approached Christmas, the receptionist said that the bailiff wondered if he'd be invited to our party. This is our first Christmas confession, by the way. In November, Fred, the personnel manager, this was before some idiot invented HR, came to see me. You knew where you were with a personnel manager.
Right.
He had another one of many visits from Nobby, the shop steward. Now, Nobby...
Oh, please. We really are there, aren't we?
Nobby, the shop steward, Father Simon, was aggressive, militant and lazy. He was a short, obese chap, and he and I had taken an instant dislike to each other.
Okay.
No, you don't say. Nobby had asked if we were going to give everyone a turkey at Christmas. Although we were in desperate financial situation, I felt that we could not avoid this event. As I had found 6 turkeys in our freezer from the previous year, I asked Fred to order...
Brilliant. That's okay then. That's fine.
I asked Fred to order 244 turkeys as there were 250 employees. Fred objected to us giving out the old turkeys. I told him not to worry and I would decide who got the old turkeys. So, on Christmas Eve, at lunchtime... Well, the nights are drawing in, so we're doing...
they are, yeah.
On Christmas Eve, at lunchtime, a queue started to form and I began to give out the turkeys to the shop floor. I'd already decided that I would use the supermarket approach and I'd give out the old turkeys to the first 6 in the queue. Well, believe it or not, Nobby was in first place. He was in the front of the queue with 3 of his cronies behind him. There was no doubt in my mind that they had pushed their way to the front of the queue. Nobby seemed a bit surprised that I smiled at him as I gave him his turkey and wished him a Merry Christmas. After lunch, Fred came to see me with George, the works engineer, who had just come back from sick leave. Unnecessary detail.
Yes.
They both seemed to be in a bit of a panic. George announced that there had been a power cut during the summer works holidays,
of course.
and I shouldn't have given out those 6 turkeys for obvious reasons, because thaw, refreezing and so on. I was furious, demanding to know why they hadn't been thrown out. That's the turkeys, not George and Fred. So I told them that I would deal with it and swore them to secrecy. I spent an hour thinking about it and decided to do nothing. Over the Christmas holidays, I had visions of Nobby and his family suffering from food poisoning, and I cautiously listened to the local news to check for health scares. Halfway through the holiday, I actually saw George in the supermarket, but I avoided him. Very clever of me, I thought. I entered the factory in the new year with my fingers crossed. I walked around the shop floor and made a point of seeking out Nobby and his cronies and the other 2 recipients of the old turkeys. Nobby was at his machine, scowling as normal. I was a bit surprised when I walked up to him and wished him a Happy New Year and asked him if he'd enjoyed his Christmas. Was it just me, Father Simon, or did he look a little older, a little green around the gills, a little weaker, a little less militant?
Right, that'll be it.
I certainly heard less about the workers' control of the means of production
Yes.
for the next few weeks.
Right.
Thankfully, Marx doesn't get a lot of mention.
No.
Thankfully, all had survived and enjoyed their Christmas dinner, but I did feel all the old turkey eaters were on borrowed time, and all because of me. I don't seek forgiveness from the shop stewards because they got the old turkeys by pushing their way to the front of the queue, but I do seek forgiveness from the families who may have suffered due to their breadwinner's greed. So this is Side Cassian, retired managing director. Thanks, Cass. Let's check in with... I know where this is going to go.
Yeah.
Sister Jackie.
Yes, this is not a tough one for me at
No.
all. Yeah, you're definitely not forgiven. Scrooge by any other name.
It is quite Scrooge-like, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
I
It's
think,
very Scrooge-like.
yes, so I think so. Brother from another gutter.
Yes, I mean, I'm minded to forgive Cassio, whatever.
Cassian?
Cassius. Never heard of it.
Cassian, the retired managing director.
Of course, yes. I'm minded to forgive him just because, I mean, it did seem like that Nobby had it coming, really, barging his way to the front of the queue with his cronies to get the free turkey. I didn't know that was a thing, getting a free turkey at Christmas, and certainly off turkey making you less militant. Don't remember seeing that in Dr. Zhivago. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, says the People's Verdict, please. Do you forgive Cassian, the retired managing director, for handing out possibly dodgy turkeys
That makes you less militant.
that make you less militant? It's the People's Verdict, please. 61054. That's what it is. First word is Simon. 61054. First word is Simon. Tonight's confession came from Cassian, the retired managing director, who in the early 80s handed out some dodgy turkeys to Nobby and his mates. who had annoyed him with their militancy and various things. Okay, people's verdict, here it comes.
So everyone's forgiving tonight. I forgive Cassian, says Michael. Nobby sounded like an absolute nightmare. You should be grateful for the free turkey. Joyce and Eastleigh, I think we've all worked for supervisors like Nobby, who act like they run the place. Serves him right getting an old turkey for pushing his way to the front of the queue. And Mark on the M4 says, forgiven. No harm, no foul.
Okay, we're back on that groove.
We are
okay,
back
that's
on
a
that.
good one. Okay, your confession, please, for me to read over the weekend. That'd be a very nice thing. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk.